This video is on some biomes, and I know I promised you guys a little biome review, so I'm going to do as much as I can. But biomes, and all right, we look at our map here. We have the Earth's major biomes. This is the picture from your textbook, so let's just take a look at the map. You've seen that on practice AP exams that sometimes they have a map in the beginning on those, use it once, more than once, or not at all. So we have our biomes color-coded, and like I said, this is from your textbook. So we're going to start at the top, and our northernmost biome is the tundra, and it's also known as the Arctic tundra. Notice that in the southern hemisphere, actually this little table here kind of covers Antarctica, but Antarctica and Greenland are both not considered a tundra. Some parts of Greenland, but not the main portion of the ice sheet. So the other areas are not in the same latitude, and they are considered Arctic deserts many times. So our northernmost biome is the Arctic tundra. So you can see it's some in Alaska, northern Canada, the very, very northern tips here in that blue color. The next biome down is our taiga. It's in the khaki color, and taiga is also known as the boreal forest. So you can see it's in Canada, also Russia, northern Europe. So this is where we have our taiga. So here we have our large trees, our coniferous trees. It's also known as the coniferous forest. As we start to get lower in latitude, we start to differentiate our biomes not by temperature, but more by precipitation. So if you look at the eastern seaboard of the United States, and if you look at Europe, notice that a lot of it is the temperate deciduous forest. It's this like lighter green color. And here on this map, they kind of combine the temperate deciduous forest with the temperate rainforest. So it's combining both of them. There was a question on that practice AP exam you took after school, and it said something along the lines of, you had to know, where is the majority of the temperate deciduous forest? Actually, maybe that was in class. We did questions in class. And for all the countries that were listed, the United States is number one. So notice that we have a lot of temperate deciduous forests in the United States. Our temperate grasslands. So if you look at this even lighter green, I guess, color, it's kind of in the Midwest part of the United States, or you can see here, this is the temperate grassland. On the exam after school, it had asked about, or it had a question about temperate grasslands, or just grasslands in general, and it said, that grasslands could not be outside 30 degrees latitude. So this proves to you in this picture that they can extend beyond 30 degrees latitude. I know that there was some confusion, I think, when we did the biomes chapter, but temperate grasslands are grasslands in temperate regions, and temperate means that we have a change of seasons. Savannas are tropical grasslands. So savanna and tropical grassland are the same thing. So that your book happens to call it a savanna. Sometimes in a test or an AP exam, you'll see it say tropical grassland. So you should just look out for that. Savanna and tropical grasslands are the same thing. Our next biome is chaparral. You can kind of see a little bit of the chaparral. You should think about dry places. I've always said California has a chaparral. You can also see down here in Australia, chaparral. So chaparral is a biome which we're going to look at it in a second, but very dry, small shrubs. Desert, this orange color, you can see there's a bright orange color, goes through northern Africa. We have the desert in the United States extending down into Mexico, Saudi Arabia. You can see through Asia we have it. So this is our desert region, very dry. We have our tropical rainforest, so you can see down here in the very dark, the dark green, so we have very close to the equator, the Amazon, we have it through Africa here, we also have Indonesia and all these islands over here. This is all considered a tropical rainforest. Tropical dry forest, it's in the tropics, but they just receive less precipitation. So here we have India, some of Saudi Arabia, and you can see just that other color here, that some down through Central America, so it's just receiving less precipitation, but it's in the tropics. Savanna is our tropical grasslands, so the most common or most popular is the African savanna, so you can see it through Africa here. We have the African savanna. And then the dark purple is talking about mountains with complex zonation. So if you guys remember, we talked about vertical zonation, and we said that as you go up a mountain or as you go up in altitude, it's very similar to moving up in latitude as far as temperature and plant growth. So I think there's a picture in your textbook, if you remember, it kind of shows you as you go up. It's like you go up and you hit the temperate deciduous forest, and then you hit the boreal forest, and then you hit the alpine tundra. So going up in altitude is very similar to going north in latitude. All right, if you remember, we looked at this, not soil triangle, this triangle here of our major biomes, and it's basically telling you that biomes are characterized by temperature and precipitation. So they're differentiated in the northern areas or higher latitudes by temperature. So the very top is very cold, and you can see decreasing temperature, increasing latitude. And then as we get to the tropics, it's really differentiated by precipitation. So we see the wet, hot areas, the tropical rainforests, and then the dry, tropical areas are going to be deserts, tropical deserts. All right, let's very quickly go through the major biomes. So our first one is the Arctic tundra. If you look at this picture here, you notice that there are very few trees. You should think that permafrost is a characteristic of the Arctic tundra. Permafrost is permanently frozen ground. And if you look at this, like I said, very few trees, lots of grasses in the summertime. Um, if you look at the graph, you can see that there's very little precipitation. So you can see the bar graph is representing the amount of precipitation. The line graph is representing the temperature changes. Um, and it's going to be cold. So we're going to have cold, dry conditions. We did talk about some things in the Arctic tundra. We talked about how the permafrost is melting because of climate change. And so when the permafrost melts, there's methane, which is a major greenhouse gas, that seeps up from within the ground, and it is going to cause a positive feedback mechanism. So more methane is going to come into the atmosphere, going to heat up the atmosphere, causing more permafrost to melt. The more permafrost that melts, then we're going to have more methane, and so on, so on, so on. So it's basically making the temperatures warmer on Earth. So there is your Arctic tundra, and you can see the cute little moose. All right. The taiga, the boreal forest, the coniferous forest, all of these things are the same thing. If you look at this picture, it's kind of blurry, but you can see that there are lots and lots of trees here. So we have coniferous trees. They're cone-bearing trees, that they have needles. The soil, if you remember, is very acidic because when the needles fall, they release acids into the soil. This biome is where most of our lumber comes from. So most of our lumber comes from the boreal forest, and it makes up 11% of Earth's surface. And if you remember, Canada is the #1 exporter of lumber, just to give you some more information. If you look at the precipitation and the temperature, the precipitation is more than the Arctic tundra, and the temperature is just going to be a little bit warmer. So as we move closer to the equator, the temperature is going to become warmer because we're further away from the pole. And I think that's all I got for you for the boreal forest. All right, temperate deciduous forest. If you look at this picture, this is showing you the change of season. So again, the word temperate is referring to temperate regions where we see seasonal changes. The picture is showing you a different colors. So this is probably in the fall time. And we have the reds and the yellows and the greens. And so this is like characteristic of like up north where the leaves fall off the trees. That's what deciduous means. Um, and I always like to say, I think of New York. That's a great example of a temperate deciduous forest. The soil here is nutrient rich because those leaves add leaf litter to the soil, putting nutrients into the soil. This could be used for farming. If you remember when we talked about it for our soil chapter, the problem in the United States is that we've really removed much of the temperate deciduous forest. So it's along the eastern part of the United States. We settled there first. We moved westward, so we've cut a lot of it down, and we've made it into homes, and we've urbanized, and we've just removed a lot of it. So it could be used for agriculture. If you look at the graph here, we have high amounts of precipitation year-round, and we have a pretty moderate swing in temperature. In the wintertime, it's cold, and then in the summertime, it's warm. So that's your temperate deciduous. Your grasslands. So this is referring to your temperate grasslands because they also have savanna coming up in a second. But your grasslands, if you look at this picture, you can see tall and short prairie grasslands. Not a lot of trees here, lots of small grasses. This is used for agriculture. Um, we said that our grasslands are the breadbaskets of the world. This is where we grow most of our wheat. Um, the soil is nutrient rich. If you look at the precipitation, we have a decent amount of precipitation, which is important because obviously crops need water. And if it's in the temperate regions, we're going to see some cooler climates in the wintertime, or cooler temperatures in the wintertime and warmer temperatures in the summertime. And that's it for your grassland. All right, your chaparral. Chaparral is very similar to a desert. So if you had to compare it to another type of biome, I know that most of us, if you haven't learned about biomes before, you may have not heard of chaparral. The other ones are obvious, but chaparral, it's kind of desert-like. If you look at this picture here, you can see it's mountainous. Many times it has small shrubs, so lots of tiny shrubs. And I told you it's along the coast of California. We also have it in the Mediterranean. If you look at the precipitation, it's very dry in the summertime, and then they receive precipitation in the winter months. So in the summertime, May through September, very little precipitation. Frequent fires in the chaparral, and the same for the grasslands. Oh, I forgot to say that. Grasslands also have frequent fires. Chaparral has frequent fires. So in the summertime, when it's so dry and there's very little precipitation, fires can ignite, and so that's a problem out in California. Temperature, very stable really throughout the year. Our deserts, you can see, has some small plants, maybe a scattered tree or two. Our deserts are very, very dry, so that's what you should think about for the deserts. If you look at the precipitation, it's just low annual precipitation year-round. The special feature, I think, for deserts is that there is a great diurnal variation in temperature. So if you've ever been out to Arizona or any desert region, you noticed most likely that in the daytime it's probably very warm, and then in nighttime it cools off a lot. So it's very cool at night and it's warm during the day, and that is referring to the diurnal variation in temperature. It means the same thing. So the reason why is because there's very little water vapor in the atmosphere. So if you remember, we talked about water vapor, and we said that water vapor is the #1 non-anthropogenic greenhouse gas in the environment, meaning that humans don't cause it, but water vapor is a greenhouse gas. And so it helps to moderate temperatures in other areas. So if you have water vapor in the daytime, it's going to absorb that radiation. At nighttime, it kind of acts like a blanket, and it keeps those temperatures warm. Whereas in the desert, where there's very little amounts of water vapor, there's nothing holding that heat down close in the troposphere, so it gets cool at nighttime. Savanna is your tropical grassland. If you look at this picture, you can see the African savanna is probably the most popular savanna. If you notice that there's a lot of precipitation in the wintertime, and in the summertime it is pretty dry. The temperatures in a tropical grassland or savanna, it's going to be pretty moderate. So you're in the tropics, it's not going to really change too much. But yeah, your savannas are your tropical grasslands. Florida, for example, is considered a flooded grassland or a tropical grassland. And so that's just a biome that we live in. Tropical rainforests. Tropical rainforests are forests that are found in the tropics. So again, that's close to the equator. Some of the characteristics, first of all, high productivity or high primary productivity. That's the amount of photosynthesis that's happening in an area. So lots and lots of vegetation, lots of trees, high biodiversity. The #2 most biodiverse biome in the world, #1 terrestrial. #1 in the world is our coral reefs. Some important features of a tropical rainforest. It receives high amounts of precipitation. So if you look at this graph here, we have high amounts of precipitation. And the temperature is moderate because it's at the equator. So it's warm, but it stays about the same temperature year-round. That's what I mean by moderate. Moderate change in temperature, I guess. Some of the things that you should remember is that the soil in a tropical rainforest is nutrient poor. So you would think otherwise because you think, oh my God, there's all these trees, all this vegetation, all this life. How could the soil be nutrient poor? It is nutrient poor. And the reason why is because there's so much precipitation that the rain and the precipitation, it leaches the minerals down through the ground. So it makes those minerals go all the way down to the ground and enters the groundwater, and it washes it out of the root zone. So the soil itself is nutrient poor. Another reason why is because if something falls on the floor of the rainforest, there are decomposers that are breaking it down so quickly, and those minerals and nutrients are sucked up by the trees and the vegetation so quickly that it doesn't last in the soil. So most of the minerals and nutrients in a tropical rainforest are found in the trees and in the vegetation. And that is your last one. I just quickly wanted to talk about the temperate rainforest. So as we said, the temperate rainforest is located up here. It's also part of United Kingdom, England over here, as well as the Pacific Northwest of the United States. You can think of California, Oregon, Washington State, up through Canada, maybe even some of Alaska. This is where we have our temperate rainforest, and it's different than a tropical rainforest because it is in a temperate region. Tropical again means that you're close to the equator. It's in a temperate region, and it also receives high amounts of precipitation. Another note for that one, that's where we have our old growth forest or our virgin forest, which is a forest that has never been logged and cut down, and because of that it has special characteristics. We said that the northern spotted owl is an example of a keystone species that lives in um, the temperate rainforest. And that was just a quick review of biomes. And you guys have your AP exam on Monday, and I'm wishing you all good luck. I know that you guys are going to do well. Um, you guys are smart. You worked hard all year long, and now you can read in your review book on biomes and do as many practice problems as you can possibly do. Bye. See you Monday.